And then we'll just, I'll point and stay present. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Good evening and welcome to the North Bend City Council North Bend Urban Renewal Agency Joint Work Session, Monday, October 23rd at 4:32 here in the council chambers. I'll ask our city recorder to take a roll call.
Councilor Hamilton.
Here.
Mayor Eagleby.
Present.
Councilor Pat.
Here.
Councilor Schultz. Present. And Councilor Nora. Present.
All right. And I do not see any counselors online at this time. Okay. After calling our meeting to order, we'll go ahead and move to public comment. I see I have 2 people signed up for public comment. Do I have anyone online as well? Okay. All right. Well,
So, Madam Mayor,
yes.
before we go into public comment, I want to make sure, are any of those public comments in regard to the public hearing?
I have, okay, so I have an Annie Merrill, is that how I say it? Signed up for, and it says organization, Oregon Shores Conservation, and the topic is the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan. And then I have Ashley Adaki, sorry, and who is with Road Climate and signed up for the topic of the Kabum.
Okay.
Are you asking if those public comments are for work session public comments or?
Well, to the, so the public hearing will be tomorrow. So the actual official record, if you will be for tomorrow. They can certainly have public comment, but they can also come back tomorrow as well. So I just wanted to point that out.
Invited back for more. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and begin tonight's work session public comment. And I just want to make sure we say thank you for participating in public comment this evening. The public comment period is an essential part of local government meetings, and each person has 3 minutes to speak. Our governing body takes input into consideration. However, in observance of Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't a time for us to have dialogue with you, but rather a time to listen. Our city administrator and our city recorder are taking notes of any action that is needed. So we'll go ahead and have Annie, if you want to come up first. There is 2 chairs here and there's the round circular things are microphones. When you begin speaking, if you just for the records, if you want to again state your name and what city you're from into the mic, then our city recorder will start the timer once you begin speaking.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Annie Merrill. I actually live in Bend, Oregon, but I'm here on behalf of Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. And we are a nonprofit organization whose headquarters are here in Coos Bay, and we have around 100 members in the Coos County area. So thank you, Mayor Engelke and members of the North Bend City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan amendment. I would like to begin by acknowledging that this update was badly needed and is an important initial step to modernize the KBUMP, which is how I'll refer to it. We applaud the diligent work on the part of the planning department to begin this process, and we support the adoption of this phase 1 draft with the inclusion of elements committing to a phase 2. A much more comprehensive phase 2 update is urgently needed to address future challenges and prepare this community for the impacts of climate change on infrastructure and natural resources. We support the draft resolution 3341 offered by the North Bend Planning Commission, which commits to continuing the KBUMP planning process after phase 1 and to developing an inclusive citizen advisory committee and technical advisory committee to inform the phase 2 process. However, we urge that the North Bend City Council alter the resolution to include representatives from the environmental and conservation groups in the area in the advisory committee. One of the primary objectives of Goal 16 and estuary management plans in general is to protect the unique natural resources and restore long-term environmental benefits to Oregon's estuaries. Environmental organizations are essential stakeholders who would offer this exact expertise in the phase 2 planning process. During the most recent Coos County Planning Commission hearing, the commission recommended language changes to sections 2.1 and 2.5 of the KBUMP to clarify the cities and the county as the sole authorities to implement the plan and remove the Port of Coos Bay as co-manager of the plan. The North Bend Planning Commission has recommended the same language change. We support this decision because the port does not have legal authority to manage the KBUMP and the estuary's natural resources. However, the Coquille Indian tribe and the Confederated Tribes of The Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians were also removed from the section of the plan. This removal makes it unclear how the tribal governments are going to be consulted or involved in the plan, which directly impacts the natural and cultural resources that they have an interest in sustaining. Removing the tribes also disregards the role their ancestors have played in stewarding the Coos Bay estuary since time immemorial. We have submitted written comments co-signed with Road Climate with suggested language changes to section 1.6 and Baywide Policy 18, dealing with government to government coordination and cultural resources. These language changes are intended to assure sufficient consultation with both tribal governments in the long-term implementation of the KBUMP. We strongly encourage the City Council accept the suggested language changes to recognize tribal sovereignty in the KBUMP. Ultimately, both tribal governments should be consulted regarding how specifically they wish to be recognized and involved in the plan, in both the short-term phase 2 update process and the long-term plan implementation. Though we're in strong support of updating the KBUMP, we just want to ensure that this phase 1 update sets a strong foundation to continue the planning effort in the next phase. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up, we have Ashley. I'm gonna write out your name phonetically.
Oh, yeah.
You can say it for the record.
The first day of school was always fun. All right, well, greetings. Road Climate is a climate justice organization based in Southern Oregon with an office here in downtown Coos Bay. Been participating in the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan update process since the opportunity started earlier this year, because it's really critical for ongoing planning for the mitigation and adaptations of climate change impacts and for protection of one of the largest estuaries in Oregon and its foundation of the community's economic development and cultural practices. During the recent Planning Commission hearings, like just said, Coos County and subsequently North Bend Planning Commissions did decide to remove the Port of Coos Bay as a co-manager of the estuary management plan. The port has no regulatory authority to be a co-manager, especially with no clear definition of what co-management means. And especially with the port's involvement with the passing of HB 3382, or known as the Port Exemption Bill earlier this year. We've seen the port actually benefit in direct legislative actions that directly impact the regulation for upcoming developmental proposals that the estuary management plan would be evaluating. So one unintended consequence from that that's of deep concern is that the tribes were removed from that co-management language as well. The Coquel and Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians were removed, and let's just say tribal governments are not stakeholders like the Port of Coos Bay. Tribal governments and their representatives must be acknowledged as sovereign nations in legislative land use planning and especially in estuary planning. The county and cities must adopt policies, binding agreements with tribes to provide meaningful consultation regarding any plan amendments and other developmental activities or applications. So with the current policy shifts and changes, tribes may be excluded. And so in a joint letter with Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition, we're suggesting for the North Bend City Council to adopt language changes in section 1.6 and Baywide Policy number 18, colored in red in the letter that we submitted. These changes are intended to assure sufficient coordination and consultation with both tribal governments in the long-term implementation of the KBUMP. And in addition, members of the tribe should have seats on any citizens advisory committees, technical committees, whatever ends up coming out of this process. The inclusion of members from the Coquel Indian tribe and the Confederated Tribes, the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians is critical because indigenous wisdom should be recognized equitably alongside scientific wisdom, as the Hanas, Coos, Mailut Coos, Coquel peoples were originally of the Coos Bay estuary since time immemorial, as well as any comments and concerns should be uplifted. So just to sum up, my last point is just to mention that I know that there's a resolution that's moving forward to commit to a phase 2. One thing, there are a couple things that are missing out of that. One, just a time bound element because let's just say climate and shifting now. We need to do adaptation planning now. And this update was like originally proposed to happen like 8 years ago. So let's see if we can make phase 2 happen sooner than later. And then as well as just reflecting that for these committee groups that are in that resolution from Coos Bay, just to make sure that we include conservation groups as well as uplift maritime industry. So anyway, with that being said, I know it's been a long time coming for this phase 1 process, and appreciate North Bend engaging in that. And let's just try to get phase 2 happening sooner than later. So
Okay,
yeah, thank you.
all right, thank you. Okay, was that it to our city reporter?
We had one come in late. Do you want them to present today?
So is it on this? Yeah.
I actually observed that. And so your council rules, which are an ordinance, trumps. And so I'm not sure where the original rules came from. That's something the council might want to revise at some point.
Uh-huh.
But I see no prohibiting. You have a 30-minute timetable for public comment.
Yeah.
And so if they fill out the form and you're in the public comment, it's the will of the council.
Yeah, I would say we have a gentleman here ready to speak and we're still in public comment, so I would be okay with allowing him unless the council has any other concerns. Okay, so is it Bonetti?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Bonetti, if you want to come forward. I'm not sure if you heard us speaking earlier, but I always do like to point out that each person has 3 minutes to speak and our governing body takes the input into consideration. However, in observance of Oregon open meeting laws, it's not a time for us to have dialogue with you, but just to listen to you. And our city administrator and city recorder are taking notes. So after you state your name and the city that you live in, then we'll go ahead and have our city recorder start the 3-minute time.
All right, thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it. Even though I came in late. My name's Ken Bonetti. I reside at 1997 Oak Street in North Bend. And I'm here to comment on the CBEMP. I'm in agreement with previous speaker on the points in general, so I won't spend much time on it. My biggest concerns are that the tribes be included in a meaningful way in this whole process, including the implementation. They're not, as was stated before, they're not a stakeholder, but they have a right to be involved in the process in a formal way. The other concern I have is that the Port of Coos Bay not be included in the implementation, in the co-management of the plan. There are state statutes that seem to prohibit that, but the whole idea of them being involved is major conflict of interest. It'd be like a private utility being on the Public Utilities Commission to decide on its own rate structure. So that just cannot happen in a legitimate process. So that's my main concern. And then thirdly, I would like to see the city of North Bend fully commit to the phase 2 process and the development of this plan. And I'm hoping that the plan will truly protect the bay and its estuaries into the indefinite future. So thank you for letting me speak. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. And also, I think, Mr. Bonetti, you might have walked in a little bit late, but we are having the public hearing tomorrow night, and you're more than welcome to come back along with the other speakers as well. All right. Number 3 on the agenda was a discussion regarding the property on north of Virginia, opposite of Pony Village Mall. Councilor Nordoff, this was your request, but you've asked for it to be removed from the agenda.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so we'll strike number 3. And we'll go ahead and move on to the special events committee recommendation discussion. So this is Councilor Hamilton and I are on the special events committee, and we have some notes that we're going to go ahead and go over with you from the time we met twice. If you hand that down to Councilor Nordoff. All right. So the special events committee was assembled with a very specific task, and
Excuse-
it was, yes,
You have a copy, do you have a copy of that?
would you like a copy of this down? I can give it to you. And yeah. So the special events committee was assembled with the purpose of discussing how North Bend was celebrated, investigating whether or not to make a recommendation moving forward with the July Jubilee event. We met twice, and the first meeting was we decided to go ahead and to do a survey to solicit feedback from people in North Bend. And really, we did put it out on social media. So we did ask people to identify if they were from North Bend or not, but to get feedback on if they wanted to see the North Bend July Jubilee return, what sort of things that they were interested in, and so forth. So we had gathered some information. And then when we met again, and also talked to many people in the community and asked questions about what they thought about the time of year that it was held and so forth. And again, the same types of things that were in the survey. So when we got back together again, and I'll go ahead and just read here from my notes that we do have some recommendations, and the background and community input that we received is, again, we met twice and collected information from a social media survey. And again, speaking with other people in the community. The survey asked our community members what types of events and activities they would like to see as part of July Jubilee. And there was some standout suggestions that we heard as we pulled together the survey results. And feel free to jump in here anytime if you think I missed anything. But we had heard family-friendly events. People commented on they liked the parade. They wanted to see the parade back. Movies. Music also, we also asked what types of music people wanted to hear. Country was an overwhelming standout. Very close second was rock and roll. There are other things that were standouts in the survey was scavenger hunts, the car show, a fun run. I promise that wasn't me. That was other people said that. Fun run came up a couple times. A history tour, which is something that they had done in the past. Honored Citizens Awards. And then also we saw a theme about events throughout the town, not concentrated in one area. Vendors, a market type of situation, kind of like the Wednesday markets. The other big thing was cornhole tournaments. We saw that several times. That's made a standout. Cornhole tournaments. The July Jubilee Princess program was mentioned several times. And also things like a wine walk, pub crawl, or a beer garden was also mentioned. So after reviewing the survey results, then the committee discussed which events out of all these things that were listed, was there some things that could come up that could be held with limited funds? Because that's usually the biggest issue, is like, who wouldn't want to have all these things, but how do you do it if you have limited funds and not a budget for an event like this? So we went through and came up with a kind of a sample of what are the things that don't really cost a whole lot of money, or they're already happening in the community. So for example, one of the business owners has a car show every year, and we reached out to confirm even though the July Jubilee event didn't happen last year, he is moving forward with having that car show anyways. Every July. So we started coming up with what would a sample plan look like if there were activities that we could seek volunteers or ask even other, if there was a fun run, that wouldn't necessarily be something that that the city would put on, but it could be a fundraising opportunity for a school. And so Sarah Wicks was one of the committee members who's been very involved in July Jubilee over the years. And so we walked through some of the things. We also had some documents from the former Pat Choke Pierce, who had provided some of the scrapbooks of all of the different events that had happened throughout the past July Jubilees. And we were able to identify, based off of the list of the things that people wanted to see, again, what are the low cost events, and what would a sample plan look like if we were able to move forward with it. And so, things like a wine walk, kind of your kickoff on a Friday with, wine walks and music, People still, they still like their North Bend birthday cake, even though the birthday isn't technically in July. But things like that, bringing back the Honored Citizens Award. Those could be part of Friday activities. And then Saturday, one of the things that we discussed about that I had asked a lot of people, because I really wasn't sure what we were going to hear when we started talking about July Jubilee with everyone. And I've always wondered is July even the right month to have it in? And over again, we had heard from people that was something that they liked. It was something that stood out from as a special North Bend activity. Different cities have their different events, and North Bend had the July Jubilee, and that they had missed that. There was comments though about how when it is typically held in the latter part of July, that is a time frame where it's hard for some of the student athletes to participate because that is dead week when the coaches can't contact them. So, our recommendations is if the decision is made to move forward with July Jubilee, having it up a little bit closer to the second weekend in July after the 4th of July, but a little bit earlier, so that if you did have a parade, those high school teams, the football teams, the cheerleaders could then also participate in it. And so, kind of going down the list of again, limited funds, what are some of the things that we could integrate into what is already happening in the community, the car shows, and then the people that come through the car show, having an evening cruise in the evening. Opry, the weekend of July 13th next summer is when Coos Bay Opry, we confirm that Coos Bay Opry will be having some music then. And then, some small things on Sunday. That's where you bring back the, Dick Wagner is the person who's done the historical walking tours in the past. I actually asked him if he wanted to be on the committee, and he respectfully declined, but said that he would definitely bring back the walking tour. He would volunteer to do that, but he didn't want to be on a committee, which I appreciate. And then, figuring out ways to incorporate some other things throughout the week. So in my notes here, I also gleaned from our conversation with Councillor Hamilton and the other committee members that, a suggestion would be, how could we also collaborate with maybe the airport or the Coast Guard to organize some static displays in the community during that week to just sort of bring together all the wonderful things that are in North Bend, including our airport and our Coast Guard. So our official recommendation for the council to think about is that we would recommend to bring back the July Jubilee. We would also propose that the Special Events Committee continues to serve as an advisory board to provide recommendations and maintain a feedback loop, and then recruit more volunteers for the 2024 July Jubilee. As the July Jubilee has not been held for several years, and this would be something that's kind of reimagined, they would also be eligible then to apply for a $3,000 Tourism Visitor Convention Bureau grant, and then to help with some of the funds for these things. So, to you.
Yeah, it was really interesting to look back in the old photo albums and see all the nostalgia, the pins and shirts and stuff that they used to do back in the day. And a lot of people that we've talked to would like it to come back, and various different activities that we're really strong on. And I think we're going to get a lot of support from volunteers and different organizations if they're like, nobody knows about it. So if we bring it up to them and say, we want to do this, I think you'll get organizations jump in and say, hey, we want to do that, or we'll help out there, along with what's really going on already. That time we're not talking about a whole bunch.
Yeah, well, obviously, when you guys brought this committee thing up, I didn't want to be on a committee, and I still don't. But I think you're going about it right, trying to get citizens. I mean, I like all this, trying to get citizens' input to help the committee. I mean, you've got a couple already. I can think of a couple more that would really make this thing sing. And I know money was brought up and everything else, and I ain't seeing a lot of stuff here that's going to cost us a lot of money. So like I said, I could, one of our companies could sponsor the cornhole tournament. Stuff like that will happen And the only way it'll happen is if you guys keep on this and get citizen input. I can't, stress that. When this all started, it was straight Pat Choate Pierce, and she did a great job. She didn't want fire trucks in the parade, so we had to kind of put our foot down there, but it really did work, and we know that COVID probably put a hamper on it, and we gotta get past the blaming everything on COVID and just go back to not really what we used to do. There's some pretty good stuff you got going on this list. If we could pull half of that off, we'd be looking like champs. I think the Fun Festival is Coos Bays, the Rhododendron Festivals is Florence. We have to have something, we got a skating rink, but that's in the wintertime. So this is the summertime. So yeah, I don't know what you're looking for, but I think you're doing a good job.
Counselor Schultz and Counselor Nora, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Yeah.
I'm with Pat. I think it's, I'm kind of relieved that it's not, the initial attempt to bring back July Jubilee is not spread out over 12 months. I think that would be a little bit too much to bite off. I had thrown out the idea of having some type of a kite event because of course in July we have wind. And I think it would be neat to have like a demonstration of people who are really good, like the people who win tournaments at Lincoln City, something like a little demonstration on how you fight kites in the sky and this kind of thing, and then give out free kites and have a little party for the kids to go ahead and fly kites. I'm thinking Lincoln Square. There are no overhead power lines at Lincoln Square. There's not any stairs to trip over. It's a big wide open space that has railings around the exterior. That might be a nice location to have it, and it's flat. But I think something like that, and I think this list is very good, but I think that it would catch on. I think it would get some interest because of the wind. So let's make use of the wind. And kids love kites.
And the purpose of we were taking we had, I think 150 plus people had filled out the survey. So we were just kind of gathering like the most recommended things on there. So this was just a sampling of ideas that, again, we were trying to identify like what is low cost and what are things that could maybe different groups put on, right? So if there was something, because we know that we're such limited with staffing, that if, there was a, again, like, let's just use like a fun run thing. Like, is that an event that like, say Rotary would be interested in doing? And we're like, this is the July Jubilee weekend. And if this was something that they wanted to do so that you're not having, our limited amount of people carry out all of those things.
I do think me and Brownie and Ralph are too old to play softball.
You can't play softball anymore. Yeah.
About pickleball.
That would be a freaking pleasure. So that is the committee's recommendation. We don't feel like it's time to dissolve because there was some other tasks that we were given to look at how to do some things with the historical society.
Do we need a vote to keep you in existence, or are we still good with that?
Let's ask our city administrator and attorney on how to move forward.
You can't do a vote at a work session. And you were created by an act of the council to report back to the council, make recommendations back to the council. And so I'll lean on our city attorney. And I'm also mindful that we're at our 15 minutes for this agenda item. So we either have to extend figure out where we're headed with this one.
So, Mr. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. So the resolution that created this committee did have a provision where the committee would sunset, but would be reviewed by the city council after a period of 6 months for consideration of continuing with its committee or dissolving it. So your administrator is correct that tonight would not be the action item to vote on continuing this committee, but I think a simple motion, potentially a very short resolution, extending this for some specific period of time, potentially with another look back in another 6 months is something that the council could consider during a business meeting.
Okay. So are you suggesting that we would need to do that, like, would we do that tomorrow night during other business or?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
And the motion would be to continue to it. Because we're not at the 6-month mark anyways.
Correct, but we're getting relatively close, I suppose.
Okay.
So if the council would like to extend it to a certain, period of certain length of time or to a date certain at some point in 2024, the council could certainly do so.
Councilor Nordhoff had her hand up.
Let's put it, my suggestion would be to put it on the agenda for the regular session, make it an agenda item and give ourselves a little time to figure out exactly what we're gonna say, give the public notice.
So not for this time, but next time?
That'd be fine.
For the November meeting, yeah, that would be appropriate and staff could even prepare a very.
Consensus.
Resolution or something.
All right. So at this point, then we'll go ahead and the special events committee is meeting again this Thursday, I think is when we have it on our calendar, and we can give them the updated information. Now, again, I know we're pressing on to past our 15-minute time period on this. But we'll go ahead and I guess I'll work with you on the suggested motion or.
That's one option and your administrator and I can get some work on the agenda item before the November meeting.
Okay, all right, perfect, thank you. Okay, all right. Number 5 is review the city council agenda for October 24th. And I will go ahead and ask our city administrator to walk us through that. We've got both the big packet and the little packet.
You've got the big packet, Madam Mayor.
Okay,
So tomorrow we have a ceremonial swearing in of a police officer. We also have a 5-year service award for one of our department heads. On the consent calendar, you have the October 10th, 2023 minutes. Any changes, corrections, amplifications? All right, the next is, this is a budgeted item. It was, however, not yet brought before the council. This was an item that is a purchase of 20 new Taser Model 10 and accompanying bundled items from Axon Enterprise. Staff had moved forward on this as a non-binding so that we could get our placeholder in. But there was a provision in the agreement that we could withdraw at any time. And so once we had worked out the additional agreement with the Coos County Airport District, we felt comfortable on moving forward with the actual purchase and putting this forward. Again, it is budgeted, so it's not out of the ordinary. Are there any questions about the new tasers? We're operating with old technology and companies are buying out other companies. And so in order to maintain our certifications, insurance and otherwise, we're going to stick with the latest technology.
Okay.
And I can tell you a whole lot about these particular, and I hope that no one ever has to come up against these. There's a reason for 20 in there.
I have a
All right.
question.
Yes.
And the police chief is there good training that officers are given on the taser? Just because I don't know anything.
Yes, the training has actually begun already. I was through the class last week. Part of the purchase of the tasers came with provided training from Axon. So 2 of our officers traveled over And I think it was on one of the previous city administrators reports, but traveled over to Bend and were certified in this new device because it's rather muchly improved in just about every aspect.
Sounds good.
So
That's good. So there's training on when you would use that versus just physical force versus firearms and that kind of thing.
yes, we're trained in a force continuum, and it starts from presence of the officer and goes up through each one of the different tools that we have, all the way up to lethal force. And the most significant thing about the taser and having the taser available to our officers is it drastically improves that space of less lethal force and
Yeah.
making it much less likely in many circumstances to where you would move to beyond that, which become into the lethal
Preferred
category.
option.
Yep.
For sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, thanks, Chief. So this is purchase of 20 of the Taser 10s. Of course, I said 20. I meant to say 10 because that's how many probes it has available to it if they were to if they needed them. Annual striping of city streets, it's on page 9. You're more than welcome to hear from your Public Works Director. This is a budgeted item. We try to piggyback whenever ODOT is in our community and is striping, and so we are simply piggybacking on theirs at a much substantial lower cost than it would normally cost us to stripe. And so it is why it's on the consent agenda item, because it is budgeted and it is normal housekeeping to go out and stripe every year.
All right, thank you.
Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm wondering if we could ask for a big fat yield sign to be placed on the collector, which functions as the state highway
Madam Mayor.
on Union. coming
This is an
into-
appropriate request. This is not on the agenda to be discussed. The council member had an opportunity to put an agenda item on, and so in order to stay with the open meetings law, I'd ask that we continue with our published agenda.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and if that is some question that you have, you can send that to the city administrator at another time, but it's not on the agenda. So we need to move through the packet.
Sure.
So that would take us to,
Takes you to public comment. Number 5, we'll ask our city planner to come forth. This is a public hearing on ordinance 2070. This is the adopting the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Before you is a proposed amendment to the City of North Bend Comprehensive Plan to update an outdated reference to maps that are no longer utilized for regulatory purposes. This proposed language is changing, quote, estuary management segment and shoreland boundary map, quote, end quote, to, quote, Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan Parts 1 and 2, end quote, which includes all regulatory maps within the plan. By approving this change, the amendment will bring us into sync with Coos County and the city of Coos Bay. Updates made to the KBEMP and Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan, KBEMP, include increasing the plan's usability. So it's now searchable, it's digitized, correcting typos and scrivener's errors, updating agency names, and pulling in local amendments to maintain estuary and consistency. During the review process, comments are solicited from state and federal agencies, as well as from stakeholders in the general public. The majority of the comments have either been incorporated, for example, removing gendered language, or tabled for future phase of an update. The Coos County Planning Commission recommended a change, which you heard about tonight, to section 2.1 and 2.5, and staff recommends a further change to this section. So section 2.1 is titled Plan Implementation and is regarding the legal authority to implement the plan, which is designated to the cities and county. The County Planning Commission removed the Port of Coos Bay from the original language and the both tribal entities from the draft language, as they do not have the statutory authority to regulate the estuary in the same way that Coos County and the cities have. Oregon Shores and Road Climate have proposed some very good language updates as well, and I will have further information on that tomorrow as I need time to coordinate with the county and the city of Coos Bay. The proposed language of section 2.1, which is that plan implementation section, reads as follows. The city of Coos Bay, my apologies, the Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan shall be implemented by Coos County and the cities of North Bend and Coos Bay. Coos County and each of the cities will adopt this plan by ordinance. All 3 jurisdictions will allow uses and activities which are set forth in this plan for these units and will adopt other implementation measures as determined necessary by each jurisdiction to carry out the intent of and to maintain this plan. A management agreement between Coos County, the cities of North Bend, and Coos Bay will assure maintenance of a coordinated intergovernmental estuary plan. Staff recommends adoption of the proposed amendment to our comprehensive plan with the option to continue pending coordination of efforts with Coos County and Coos Bay tomorrow. And as we heard tonight, there's a lot of support for phase 2, which we'll get to in the next agenda item. And the technical advisory committee, which again, we'll get to in the next agenda item. Staff supports, the proposed language that was submitted on Friday by Oregon Shores and Road Climate. And we just need to coordinate that effort with both the Coos County and city of Coos Bay.
Okay. So, and what were you saying that yesterday, the city of Coos Bay, like what has been through the adoption process so far? Because it's Coos Bay, North Bend, and the county. And the county, we're all adopting it in coordination with one another. It's been through all of the planning commissions and it goes before the legislative bodies tomorrow. Tomorrow, gotcha. Okay. Questions, Councilor Nordoff?
Is there a deadline on this?
There's not necessarily a deadline on it, no.
Because it's, and half inch of material, fine print that gets handed to us on Friday. It's rather a lot to absorb and understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little more time to digest, ask questions and have a good familiarity with it. It's a lot.
Just to dovetail on her, how long did the planning commission have this?
They had it for 2 weeks.
Okay.
It is a lot of information and the plan itself is well over 700 pages. So it's a bear of a document for sure. But as mentioned, the updates are digitizing the plan from the handwritten document or hand typed document rather, and correcting typos and scrivener's errors is the primary focus of this update.
Phase 2 is where the major changes would be.
Phase 2 is where the meat and potatoes is going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate to slow down the process. I don't know. I know we have our attorney on the Zoom here as well, if he has any comments or recommendations.
And we also have Meg Reed from DLCD available online if
Okay.
you do have any questions on the specific content.
Councilor Nordoff had her hand up again, and then I would like to hear from Ms. Reed.
Yes, I read where the new tide gate map, there was a suggestion that the new tide gate map be, and I'm trying to remember the exact detail, be used as, be questioned as to the upper reaches of the estuary map. or
And
something.
just to be clear, Councilor Nordoff, can I ask, that is, are we talking about phase 2 or phase 1? 'Cause I wanna
Phase
make-
1.
Okay,
I believe.
is that in phase 1?
The tide gate map is a brand new map that now has been included.
Okay,
And it's kind of. It kind of gets into the details, but maybe that's something that we can have an answer on tomorrow.
Absolutely. I can do some investigation on that. I know that I addressed it in my planning commission report. I just don't have it right in front of me.
Sure.
But I will have some more additional information for you tomorrow.
Understand.
let's,
There's just a lot of detail.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the planning commission had it for a couple of weeks. I mean, we're taking their recommendation
Right.
here
Yeah.
too.
I know we have 2 people online. Do they have a comment that they would like to state?
Meg, did you have anything?
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm Meg Reed, the Coastal Policy Specialist with the Department of Land Conservation and Development. The updates, as Derek has mentioned, are there's no substantive changes to the policies. And this has been something that's been ongoing for actually many years now. So many people have reviewed it over that time period, and there has been pretty robust public participation and review of the plan over that time period as well.
What is the will of the council on keeping it on the agenda for tomorrow night?
I'm fine with that. Like I said, I think I appreciate the fact that the planning commission has had it this long, and that's our arm of this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Yeah.
Councilor Schultz?
I reviewed it this weekend.
Mhm.
No.
Councilor Rodoff?
I would like to table it for 2 weeks to give more opportunity to review it, because I thought I was going to be out of town and didn't learn that I wouldn't be until yesterday. And just to understand everything and to be able to register all the comments that have been made, which are lengthy. I don't see any reason why we can't just come back to it in 2 weeks and give ourselves a little more. There's no deadline here. There's no urgency, as far as I understand.
So I'm hearing the consensus from the council that they are okay with continuing it on the agenda for, and again, this is just for phase one. We're not talking about anything else here. But if the council were swayed to move it in 2 weeks, how would that change? Would that change anything?
It wouldn't materially change anything for us. We're gonna come back with the same documents, that are before you now. If we table it for 2 weeks, so it won't substantially change anything that's coming before you.
And then we would strike so council, if that was a decision that first straw poll here was keep it on the agenda for tomorrow night. Are you being swayed to move it for 2 weeks, or do you want to go ahead and just keep it on the agenda for tomorrow evening?
Madam Mayor, things about tabling and all that should be voted on at the time of the formal council meeting.
Well,
Consensus is great, but
Mr. Wolf,
consensus doesn't hold up in the written word.
So actually, I'll chime in, then we can go to our city attorney. This is a advertised meeting. It's called a work session. It is a public meeting per Oregon law. You can't take votes, you can't take action, you can't take consensus among. We always encourage council members not to commit their vote on a particular action. However, the purpose of a business meeting is to conduct business of the council and then move it forward for action items at your business meeting. So with that said, the city attorney can weigh in if I have misspoke on the Oregon Public Meetings Law.
No, I don't think you misspoke. I think that the council has had its discussion, and the agenda item is on for your business meeting tomorrow. And if the council wanted to vote on postponing this hearing or recessing the hearing, that the council would do that tomorrow night. The council could also choose to vote to adopt the ordinance tomorrow night.
and I am getting a consensus from the council tonight as we speak through that the majority in the room right now are comfortable with continuing on and moving forward. If I was hearing from the majority of the room who says, hold up, that everybody needs more time, but I think they've had it electronically since Thursday or Friday.
The council will make that decision tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor,
Yeah,
All right.
well,
I have a question of the staff. So when we're talking about, say, including the tribes or excluding the port, is that something that we have to decide as part of a vote on this revision?
I would recommend that you do.
Okay, so that's my concern, is that it's fairly significant. The issues that have been raised by the public and by environmental agencies and by review of other interested parties, we have to decide on that tomorrow night. And I do not feel prepared to decide on that tomorrow night, given the amount of volume. That's great that the planning commission, they had it for 2 weeks. We've had it since Friday,
Thursday.
and it's not enough time to make a good decision.
I will vote on that tomorrow.
And Councilor Nordoff,
So-
I do want to address your concerns a little bit. So part of the coordination that I'm going to try and conduct with the county and city of Coos Bay tomorrow is involving inclusion of the tribe in an equitable way in section 1.6 and policy 18 of the CABEMP, as well as the revised language of section 2.5, which is the plan implementation and only covers the authorities having jurisdiction. So that's part of what I'm going to present tomorrow night as well.
Would that be part of the language that we would vote on?
Correct. And I would provide you draft language tomorrow.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And also my last point, the Port of Coos Bay, I do have concern about the port being the co-partner to sponsor phase 2. I think it is a conflict of interest. I don't think it's a stretch to say that.
And in the
So is that something that would have to be addressed in this current draft that we're considering passage of?
And that language has been pulled out by the Coos County Planning Commission and further revised by the city of North Bend. Which is that section. I had it here just a second ago. Effectively saying that the city and the county would coordinate, cities and county would coordinate together to manage and implement the plan, is the gist of it. But it pulls out that co-manager language for the Port of Coos Bay because they don't have the regulatory authority to alter the plan.
Yep, I agree.
Mhm. Good.
Has any of the other agencies already voted and accepted this?
It's been through their planning commissions, but it hasn't been through their legislative bodies yet.
Is following up on that, if I might, when do you foresee that coming before the city of Coos Bay's council and the Board of Commission or the county commissioners?
Tomorrow, the 24th.
Okay.
Okay, all right. We'll go ahead then and continue. This will be on the work set or the agenda for tomorrow evening. There'll be time for more public comment tomorrow evening. There'll be time for more questions tomorrow evening. So we'll go through that process then. All right. Okay, so you have other items on the agenda, right?
I do.
And that would take us to number, is that 7? 6, ordinance.
The public ordinance and the public hearing, the ordinance are basically one and the same. So now we're
You mean-
moving to resolution 3341.
You meant Tuesday, right? Not Wednesday?
Did I say Wednesday?
I didn't hear it.
I don't know. Maybe I said Wednesday. I don't know.
It's Monday. Yeah.
Today's Monday, yes, but what you just heard, or whatever day it is. The public hearing and the ordinance 2070 are one in the same commingled. And so now we're moving to agenda item number 7, which is resolution number 3341, which is evidencing a commitment to coordinate the Coos County and Coos Bay to pursue funding to complete a comprehensive update of the multi-jurisdictional Coos Bay Estuary Management Plan. And
So-
today is Thursday.
So, like our city administrator just said, this is a commitment to future phases of the plan. And to pursue funding and cooperate with future phases of the plan, which would be a comprehensive revision and incorporate the best science and data and partnerships that we can to make it the best plan that it can be. In this resolution, it attempts to, but does not fully identify the Citizens Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee. And so to the point of including environmental groups and conservation groups in the Technical Advisory Committee, it states in the resolution that it's including but not limited to all of these partners and agencies. And so we certainly would incorporate, Road Climate and Oregon Shores if they wanted to be a part of this, these advisory committees, and they would guide the content and revision of the future phases of the plan. So that's what this resolution is attempting to accomplish, is this future commitments and kind of defining those technical and citizen advisory committees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions on that? Okay,
All right, thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll bring our finance director, because this one is unique all to its own, but very glad that staff has worked with our city attorney to work it out. This is an intergovernmental agreement between the city of North Bend and the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency relating to services to be provided by the city of North Bend. Yeah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As our city administrator said, this is an agreement between the city of North Bend and the North Bend Urban Renewal Agency that outlines the specific services that the city provides for the Urban Renewal Agency. And so this agreement is needed because it really clarifies what those services are. The city already does a lot of these things. So this just really articulates what those things are. There are a couple of new items, and I'll point those out as I go through these, but kind of what are those duties? It's things like providing staff support for public meetings such as these, preparation of the notices, agendas, minutes, budget preparation and oversight, kind of the accounting and the audit functions that the city facilitates. The agreement identifies that it is that city staff will be assigned for work on behalf of the Urban Renewal Agency, and that the kind of the hiring and firing and discipline of employees rests with the city for those employees that are assigned to it. The agreement outlines and identifies that the city may process and administer public procurements and contracts. Again, something that I believe happens already. This just clearly states that those services are being provided. Detailed statement of financial services. Some of those things include the receiving of cash and the payment of bills. Again, those are already processes that are already happening. It just identifies those. One new item relating to that is right now we provide an acknowledgement of the bills each month. We will separately break out the urban renewals, and at the urban renewal meeting provide just those bills that were paid on behalf of the Urban Renewal Agency. So providing a little more detail there with regards to those. Just identifies that the Urban Renewal Agency will provide information to facilitate the year-end audit and for long-range financial planning. That we will use the same auditors, which makes sense. The Urban Renewal Agency is already included in the city's financial statements. It's what's considered or called a blended component unit. So it really operates like a fund of ours already. There's the agreement is cancelable or may be terminated with a 30-day written notice by either entity. Identifies also insurance that is keeps it the same. Right now they're separate insured on separate policies. That just outlines that. And I think also the last point is like any changes to this intergovernmental agreement would also require mutual agreement of both entities. So
I'm surprised we don't have something like this in place now. Yeah, but it all sounds should help budgeting, should help the.
It'll really help clarify a lot of roles.
Yeah.
In terms of like a fiscal impact, there really isn't any. Again, these are things we're already doing. It's just simply outlining those for us. And again, our recommendation that will be before you is to approve the intergovernmental agreement.
okay.
So the interesting thing is, this is the most interesting agreement I've ever in my 16 years have ever come up, because you're one and the same, which means that the city council will be asked to approve this intergovernmental agreement and the mayor would sign it. And then the Urban Renewal Agency would be asked to consider it. And if approved, then the executive director, who's also the mayor, would, the chair, who's also the mayor, would then sign it. So she actually will sign it under two. And for the confusing part of the public is the city and the urban renewal agency are two distinct governments. And so the in a nickel tour, this simply clarifies whose hat we're wearing at any given time that we are performing services. And so this came to light when we went to issue the bids for the Visitor Information Center. And it's like, well, we advertised everything under the city, but we're actually operating on behalf of the Urban Renewal Agency, but we're managing everything on the side of the city and then paying for it on the side of the Urban Renewal Agency. So exactly who am I?
Mhm.
And I think they made a television show about that.
We're gonna
So-
high five each other at the end.
Exactly. So you'll see this on two different agendas for tomorrow.
Councilor Rob, did you have a question about URA?
Yes, I do. So is this something that other cities have done we're kind of? Have you seen this and like does Coos Bay have one or?
I don't know, but again, I'm not a follower, I'm a leader. And so we went to our city attorney because we identified that there are concerns and issues
Okay.
that when we're operating under city policy, what governs that authority when we issue bids or contracts for the URA. So we want to make sure that our local government's covered. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you what other governments are doing. But this is the right thing to do for our government. And so we're bringing that forward to you.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Okay, so anything else?
Nope.
All right, thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you.
So
Mhm.
now, Madam Mayor, we get on to number 9, which of course is deliberately after number 8, because we'll bring our library director. And as you know, the Urban Renewal Agency is actually financing a project. However, under the hat of the city, we have procured architectural proposals for the restoration. So with that said, Haley, you have the floor.
Mhm.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So provided for you today is a fee proposal provided by Robertson Sherwood Architects that covers architectural and engineering services for the next phase of the library restoration project. The proposed services will encompass plans for replacing the main entrance doors, updating our HVAC system for our lobby, and also renovating the lobby, modernizing and enlarging the public restrooms to meet current accessibility standards, upgrades to the community meeting room and that kitchen, enhancements to the children's section, and the designation and creation of a distinct teen section in the library, the coordination of upgraded lighting systems throughout the library, and an assessment and possible replacement of the current roofing system. In order to fund this proposed service package, the city plans to allocate $15,335 from the library's donation fund, which is made up of grant funds, and $16,165 from the Urban Renewal Agency to cover the proposed fee of $31,500.
Okay. Questions?
Are we really talking about putting $1.7 million into the library?
Yes, the initial project scope that we are using to pursue grant funding is actually $4.5 million. So
Into our library? Well,
Yes.
that seems goofy. Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
sure.
Now, for the edification, so the Coos Bay Library is sinking.
Oh, I get it.
And so their estimated cost to actually build and replace their library right now is a range of,
I believe the last figures were around $20 million for a
Well,
new
yeah, I get
facility.
it.
yeah,
I'm
it's,
still saying the county ought to have a library. And instead of everybody spending $20 million for a library that's 5 miles away from ours. But go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, that's just me. Go ahead.
Some of the larger costs that we anticipate are for the roofing. and for the public restrooms. Because the restrooms don't meet current accessibility standards, they actually have to be expanded, which will require that they move all of the plumbing in that part of the facility. And so it will be costly. So we do expect that we will have around $950,000 remaining in the designated urban renewal funds. We have around $500,000 in our library donation fund. Our library foundation has already raised almost $60,000 for the project, and we are pursuing a wide variety of grants in order to fund the remaining portions of the project. We actually, through the North Bend Public Library Foundation, received notification that we were granted $40,000 from the Judith Ann Mogan Foundation for that teen area that I mentioned. And so various funding sources from the city, the Urban Renewal Agency, and other foundations and fundraising will help bring together the funding necessary for the full package.
Okay, and thank you, Haley. For the benefit of the city council, so the library has a countywide tax district. And to echo the council members' comments, as in order to have a library in the city, we have a commitment that we're required to take care of the building. So should at some point this council or your constituents decide that they do not want a library specifically in the city limits, those would certainly be conversations that we could have. But as long as the desire is to continue the library, we have to move forward with our obligation, which is to maintain the building. And so really it is the will of the council, who then really indirectly asked the URA to help finance to maintain the building, which is an asset.
Well, it hasn't been upgraded in like 4 years, right? Like majorly, or am I wrong?
So the library had an expansion added, I believe it was in 2003.
Okay, sorry, 20 years.
Yeah, and that was a significant upgrade to a portion of the building. The existing public spaces of the building, the lobby and the restrooms, the area where our circulation desk, our children's room, are actually mostly original to the 1989 opening. A lot of the painting and furnishings and carpeting, all of those sorts of things, and the majority of the building are still original from 1989. So it has certainly been well used.
Yeah.
Thank you, Haley.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before?
Not on that. No, not
All
seeing
right.
any.
So moving on the agenda, there is no executive session, so we expect no action. City administrators report, your committee reports, any council comments, and any other business, and then adjournment. And Madam Mayor, that would be your regular session agenda
Okay.
walkthrough for tomorrow.
All right. So should we go ahead and take a look at our Urban Renewal Agency agenda for tomorrow? I see we have a couple items on it.
Sure. Thank you. All right. So now, in this respect, tomorrow you'll be commissioners. And so we have a call to order. You will have public comment. You'll have approval of the URA minutes from the October 10th, 2023 meeting. Any issues, corrections, amplifications, changes? All right. You then have a request for redevelopment assistance grant. As you're aware, there are 3 grant programs that are budgeted by the Urban Renewal Agency. One is a facade grant program, one is a redevelopment assistance grant program, and one is a micro mural grant. We have with us our community development manager, Stephanie, and also online, the applicant, RJ Mills, who can present to you the request for funding from the Urban Renewal Agency under the redevelopment assistance grant. Past examples of this particular grant are the Wildflower Program and then the Dream Again Emporium. With that said, you have the floor.
Okay. Hello, I have been working with RJ and she's bringing him on now, who will be the new business in the old Chicarelli's building. And so they are looking to do some renovations to get that up and running for their operations. And so RJ has put together his application and is seeking funding for that.
And if I see we have RJ online. There he is. Hi, and welcome.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Congratulations on your new adventure. Or
Thank
expand.
you. Yeah, it's a lot of projects, but it's an exciting opportunity. So am I just to clarify, should I go over the plan? Do you guys have any paperwork there, or do I need to somehow provide that?
Actually have the actual plan. And
Okay.
so this is a interior remodeling to suffice for the needs of his business, very much like we did with Wildflower. Also like Dream Again Emporium. It is reimbursable, which is after the fact at 20 cents on the dollar. The commission in the past has not set a maximum. The total request for this is
$24,000.
$24,000 of reimbursable, which would tell you that 4/5 is coming in private, and then it would be matched by 20 cents on the dollar by the Urban Renewal Agency.
Okay.
And so this would be interior renovations to facilitate the business.
Correct, for the interior. And then the facade grant addresses the exterior. So this is for the interior work to get.
Just the interior work, yeah.
Do we
Yes.
anticipate a facade grant that would really,
I would.
yeah.
Yes.
yeah.
He has
Yes.
spoken.
There you go. Not to sound foolish, but David, do we have a lease?
We're extremely close to a lease on both. On both tenants. So RJ has reviewed the entire lease. He's made a couple comments back. Our city attorney is reviewing those. See our city attorney on that side of the fence. And then I guess he's the URA attorney on this side. And then with the salon, they are meeting with their legal counsel to review the lease. And if they have any comments back, we'll do the same process with those. That's where we are with both projects. Obviously, he will not be able to move forward without
Right, yeah.
a lease, a building
I was just
permit.
asking.
Exactly, no. But I always like to
Yes.
reaffirm that a lease agreement and a building permits what's necessary to move forward with any redevelopment within the property.
I saw Counselor Nordoff had her hand up, and I was just going to ask, so I see in the project description that it's the renovation of the property for your second location, and that the scope of work that what you're asking for is the funds will be put towards making the space more useful. And so an opportunity for live music, additional walk-in space for multiple beer taps. And I know that some of this is working with the city planning as far as capacity, but what is the goal of capacity that you're looking for to be able to hold in that building?
I think more, honestly, that's gonna be up to the fire department. But from my perspective, it's just utilizing the space in a better way. So like right now, there's seating that's along a wall that really isn't functional. It's large booths, and I don't think that would necessarily work. And so we're doing a lot of demo. That's the major part of it. And then opening up, and so we have one large space in the interior. Of course, that's contingent on the building has a lot of smaller interior rooms. And so one of the goals is to kind of make one sizable area in the general seating location that's kind of close to the restaurant or the kitchen, which would allow more people to sit in that one space. And so that's kind of the major use.
Gotcha. Okay, Counselor Nordoff?
Two things. I'm excited about this project. I think it's gonna be great. I hope that possibly some thought might be given to acoustical engineering, because that was one very loud restaurant, hard to hold a conversation. That's my,
That makes sense. The ceilings are a little bit low, and so I think that's something I'm trying to remedy.
and the other question is more general in that I think we have two UR projects that I have not seen them go out for advertise for RFPs. And I hope that in the future that if we acquire property, that we put it out for an RFP. That's my comment.
Well, I don't want to read too much into that comment. You want to elaborate?
I'm sorry.
I don't want to read too much into that comment. It's kind of vague. You want to elaborate?
Normally, I would think that we would benefit by putting out word, which is a request for proposal or a request for qualification, RFP in this case, for different commercial entities, such as we have here, to propose what they might be able to do with the property. And then we would have a range of applicants we would be able to evaluate, and maybe based on the highest bidder for that desirable property, we would then be able to make an educated selection of tenants on the property. And I think that is entirely appropriate for public entities with properties for rent. So I'm just.
Madam Councilor, what two properties are you referring to? What two URA projects are you referring to?
I'm referring to the property that we acquired when we bought the old dry cleaning establishment. And then this property, the old Ciccarelli's restaurant.
Okay, so
It's a lease situation.
so I'm going to address this I'm going to address both issues. First and foremost, there is work being done at the dry cleaners. We have, but it's done increment. And it's also done in a reimbursement with the state, because the state paid for that building in its entirety for the dry cleaner. And so far we have worked to put the fence up in the back. We've removed the trees so that no additional damage would be. We are in discussions with the adjoining property owner who has agreed to actually meet us halfway and pave that entire lot. And staff is working on all of the specs and RFPs to put that renovation project out to bid. So you have insinuated that staff is circumventing our procurement process, which is required by state law. The second thing, Madam Counselor, is that on this particular project, you're impugning the project because this was a URA project. This was brought to the URA with a very specific opportunity, a very specific purchase, and a very specific end game to a project that the city council set as a priority, which was to bring a brewery to the city. And that project has been out on the street for almost 2 years. We have tried unsuccessfully to get that at Power Sports. We've looked at other properties throughout the city, but it had continued to be a priority. So you as a governing body, yourself included, voted unanimously for this project. So to disparage the staff, myself and my staff, and insinuating that we're circumventing procurement or otherwise is very disconcerting to me. And it continues. And so it has no place in this meeting. And I'm sorry that you brought it up, but I hope it addresses the commission's questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got an easy one for you. You're gonna have Coors Light.
Oh my goodness.
Huh?
We do make our own beer, and we do have some really good light lagers. So no Coors Light specifically, but I assure you you'll like it.
He'll like it. He'll like it. when is your expected, so if this, if the URA grants the application tomorrow evening, how quickly do things move? When do you expect to be open?
Well, the main thing is the lease, which hopefully will be imminent here. And then beyond that, my goal is beginning of next year. I think that's conservative, but not necessarily overly so. So.
Okay. Well, we're hearing lots of buzz around town anticipating your opening. So whenever you're, I mean, this is a live meeting that people are watching, so they know that you're coming, but whenever you're ready to make the official announcements on social media, I'm sure they would love to hear more details or renderings when you have them.
Sure thing.
Rival.
Yeah.
And I don't have any further questions about the application, and it doesn't sound like any other counselors have any further questions. So that will be something that they will, or the URA commissioners will vote on tomorrow evening. Okay.
Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, from there, I believe it goes to, well, I don't believe I better look. That's what I thought. So the next item would be the intergovernmental agreement between the city of North Bend and the Urban Renewal Agency, which we gladly will make a presentation to you if you'd like. But you already heard it. And then the executive director report and then adjournment. And with that said, Madam Mayor, it's back to you.
Okay. All right. So then that would take us back into our meeting. We reviewed both packets and really we have nothing else. So we'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Okay.
Thank
Have a
you.
great